Thanks for the time today. Much appreciated. We got the AMD results, comments on PC weakness. We obviously know what Intel said about their quarter. We got these reports about Korean inventories and stockpiles. Is this the time to be getting into the space?
Thanks for having me, Carl. Look, it's been a very complicated year for semiconductors. There's clearly a lot of cross currents in the industry alone that's been evolving that we saw through COVID, the V recovery, and then the shortages that have lasted for quite some time. And then you also have just these macro effects that you're talking about, whether it's the recessionary fears, Ukraine and China lockdowns. But, really the way I'm looking at it in terms of my framework for thinking about the space is really the end markets that are going to do better on the other side of the shortages. And ultimately, people have been trying to predict this for, almost a full a year, and no one's gotten it right. And so I'm going to focus my expertise on end markets where I think on the other side of these shortages have secular trends, companies that have content opportunities and share gain opportunities, like an AMD, for example, that has picked up a lot of share versus Intel, specifically in servers as well as PCs. And this has really been driven over the course of the last 3-4 years. This is not something that got seeded last week or last month. This has been months, years in the making of product roadmaps where AMD really set a great roadmap, executed on it, and conversely, Intel did not and had process technology challenges. And then more importantly, you had a disruption in the end market where you moved from the enterprise to the cloud, and that created this big gateway and opportunity for AMD to take all that share.
Speaking of end markets, there were warnings from both Intel and AMD on the PC market. What's your estimation? What are you forecasting with regard to when some of the pressure on certain end markets that aren't necessarily in favor right now may see a bottom? Is it this year, as Intel suggested, or further out?
Well, I think you really need to go back pre-COVID to look at certain end markets. And specifically, you're asking about the PC end market. That market had gone X-growth pre-COVID. And it was on the decline. And all of a sudden, during COVID, people got multiple PCs for work from home, et cetera. And there was this sort of theory of the PC got reimagined. And so we went from a market that was 275 million units or so, declining 5 or 10% a year or slowly, and you went up to about 350 million units. So now we need to reset back down to those levels. There's a bigger install base, but I think it's a market that's X-growth. It was X-growth pre-COVID. We're going back to a market that's probably 275, 280, and ultimately it's going to be X-growth going forward. Same thing for the smartphone market. So really you need to be thinking about what COVID drove and ultimately what are good markets that were growing before and that can maybe potentially even accelerate on the other side versus, say, PCs and smartphones that are going to have a big hangover.
Yeah, that's something. It's actually something that everybody can sort of understand and relate to, given their own personal experiences with demand during that time. Adam, appreciate it very much. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.